So right now, we're just going with the salt brine as the pre-treatment, although it does include roadway salt with the water to get to that certain salinity that we use. Right now, we're only doing a liquid pre-treatment.
I'm Nick Delacanal with WFAE. I read a headline from one of the TV stations, I think, that NCDOT was having trouble with supply, I guess, with the amount of salt. What is the city seeing? Do you guys have enough salt? How much do you have? And is that a concern?
Yeah, as far as CDOT, we're fully stocked with salt across the department. We have 5,000 tons on hand spread across our various facilities. We also have salt orders on standby in the event we need to replenish.
How many trucks do you have?
We have 32 assigned trucks on our assigned routes.
And those are all plows as well?
That's correct. They come equipped with plows and spreaders.
Hi, my name is Miana. I'm with WSOC. I'm wondering, with the forecast that we're seeing now, it's going to be mostly ice. Does the treatment, does the plan for you all, does that change?
It does, and really ice can be dangerous. So if we do see an accumulation of ice, that's when we'll change our application, apply roadway salt. But again, it really depends on the accumulation, the existing conditions, the roadway temperatures, things of that nature.
And so as far as we were talking about wintry mixes, so when ice, they say it's a little more dangerous. So would you say that you're ramping up your efforts? What does it look like as opposed to something that may not be as dangerous as an ice storm?
So at all times, we have a snow and ice plan. So depending on the type of precipitation or conditions we see, we'll pull from that plan what our response looks like. And at that time, it's going to be an all hands on deck, like I mentioned, 24-hour operation, make sure we have our road safe.
The city of Charlotte has a lot of transplants in this community. You know, people from up north, from Massachusetts, New York, and everything, that might think, you know, it's a snowstorm, we're very used to this. What would you like to say to them about what's different from what we expect down here in the South versus what they might be used to with a big snowstorm up north?
You know, at the end of the day, safety, that's our primary focus. We just want to make sure we're able to get in, do our jobs, keep the road safe for emergency services, things along those lines.
But sometimes roads can't be cleared as quickly as they are in the Northeast because I assume you have less plows than what Boston would have. Is that fair characterization?
I think that's a fair assessment, but based on what we have and the type of weather we experience here, we have more than enough to respond.
BTV?
Yeah, I wanted to know, you're doing the main roadways. What should people do in neighborhoods when it comes to clearing some of that ice?
So neighborhood streets are on our priority list. It's just a matter of time before we get there. Again, our primary focus are those priority routes, 1s and 2s, our major minor thoroughfares, those collectors, and then we start working into those residential streets. So we'll eventually make it to those.
Sancy? You guys have any questions? Nick? Go ahead.
I was just curious, like, which roads and conditions do you guys see as being the most dangerous in these types of ice events? Are these like bridges, overpasses, or side streets?
Yeah, so your bridges and culverts, those are always some of our top priorities. Any other isolated or elevated areas in which shaded areas as well that may not get that melting power as quick as some of the other streets.
Alfred, can you talk a little bit about like that prioritization? So what makes a priority 1, what makes a priority 2?
Yeah, of course. Priority 1, that's going to be a major thoroughfare. Priority 2, a minor thoroughfare, and those are street classifications generally characterized by the width, number of lanes, the volume of traffic, speeds on those streets.
So like a South Boulevard, Park Road, one of those 2 or 1s?
Those are going to be a priority 1s.
When it
So-
comes, sorry.
So is the NCDOT going to take care of the interstate?
That's correct.
When it comes to a snowstorm versus freezing rain in the forecast, how are you guys, is there anything you're doing differently with that? I'm sorry if this was already asked.
Oh, good question. If we see snow, which again we prefer snow rather than ice, that snow tends to melt a little bit quicker. We'll use plows to clear the lanes so we have a clear traveling path. So again, our response type may change, but the overall approach is the same.
And with the freezing rain, especially with the temperatures continuing to be cold, what might that response look a little different?
Again, just that 24-hour around-the-clock response where we have crews out constantly monitoring the roadway conditions, the roadway temperatures, the accumulation, how much is actually sticking. So again, it's just that all hands on deck, around-the-clock response.
How does the timing of when the storm would hit affect what you guys do, whether it hits in the afternoon or late in the evening when it's colder? How does that affect what you guys do?
So again, we're on the 24-hour operation, so we'll have two 12-hour shifts covering the morning and evening. So again, our job is just to monitor those conditions, the forecast, and once we do get into an event and start experiencing any weather, we'll jump into action.
Do you have any message to the public? Say they do have to go outside for some reason, they can't stay in, maybe, you know, they need to go out. How can they help you all? Anything that you want to let people know?
Again, just everyone stay safe, stay aware. If you do see emergency vehicles on the roadways, obviously be cautious of those. If you see our crews or NCDOT trucks out, there's usually a distance we like for a vehicle to be behind us, 100, 200 feet. So just some general standard practices to keep everyone safe.
Well, I had a similar question. It's like, what can residents do right now to actually help your operations? Is there anything?
Again, I think just staying tuned in, staying up to date on what the conditions are, what the guidance is at the city, state level. I think that'd be very important.
Would you encourage people to be doing their own pre-treatments as well, salting their driveways, sidewalks, things of that nature?
So he's in charge of roads. So
Well, hey, do people need to move their cars if they're parked on like neighborhood streets? Is that helpful, or are there other things that people can do?
Yeah, that could be a benefit, and we have some measures in place if we need to communicate out to the public, especially in the uptown area, if we need to put in place parking restrictions to allow us to come in and clear some of that accumulation.
Great. Okay, good.
Laura's up next.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, good morning. I'm Lori Reed, L-A-U-R-I-E-R-E-I-D. I'm the city arborist with landscape management. Landscape management, what we do during storms, we make sure roads are clear. So if trees or tree parts fall into the road, we'll respond by making sure those roads are open. Very similar to CDOT, we do prioritize those major thoroughfares. So those are the ones we want to get cleared first, at least one lane open. We want to make sure that there's space for emergency vehicles, police, fire, medics, to be able to get through. We prioritize police stations, hospitals, making sure those routes are open to make sure that's able to get those emergency vehicles where they need to go. Our neighborhood streets are a lower priority, but we do want to make sure that we do get to everything as soon as possible. During this event, what we're going to do this weekend, just like we do every single weekend, we have a 3-person crew on call. So from 3 o'clock every day until 6:30 the next day, we have 3 people whenever something falls into the road. If a road is blocked, it's important that people call 911. That is an emergency. We will then get a message. We will dispatch our crews out there to look at the situation, see what equipment's needed, and get that cleared off. So that's how we're going to be operating moving forward with this event. Our tree maintenance supervisor, Josh Merwin, he's here if y'all want to ask questions specifically to him today, but he's going to be the on-call supervisor and will be managing the event over the weekend. We'll continue our cleanup efforts into next week as well. So people should expect if a tree part does fall in a neighborhood street, if there's a lot of damage throughout the city, that is going to be prioritized, but that will be a little bit later, making sure we get those major thoroughfares cleared first. If we need to move quickly, if we have a lot of calls, sometimes we will cut and clear the road and put the debris behind the sidewalk. We will come back in some instances and pick it up. It just depends on the size of the event. People, again, if a tree is down in the roadway, blocking the road, 911 is the correct call. If it's on the sidewalk, if it's in someone's yard, if it's on the grass strip between the street and the sidewalk, that's not an emergency. They should call 311 and report that, and we will make sure that gets cleared during normal operation times.
So often when a tree goes down, sometimes power lines are hit. Is that a Duke call that as opposed to calling you guys?
Yes, well, you still should call 911 if it's in the street, but if any kind of power line is involved, you do need to call that entity. So if it is power, call Duke Energy. If it might be Spectrum or AT&T, if it's the lines below the power lines as well. and they will dispatch. Our crews, we cannot clean up anything until that utility line is mitigated. So if you call us, we will inspect, we'll see that it's come through, and we'll continue to inspect until we see those utility lines are back up and the area is safe.
For people that are still not very used to ice storms and
Yeah.
everything, what are some of the biggest things between a normal snowstorm versus what we might see with this freezing rain, and what do people need to know
Yeah.
about just the dangers with trees when it comes to that?
Sure, yeah. So ice will definitely add a lot of extra weight to those branches. So when we get over about a 1/4 inch of ice on those branches, the small twigs, they will break. Once you start getting up to a 1/2 inch and greater, you're going to get larger branches that are going to start to break. If a tree has any kind of root issues, if it sits on there for a long period of time and we get winds, we could potentially get whole tree failures as well. It's really important that if people see a tree down, it might be your first instinct to go inspect it and see what's happening, but you don't know if there's any utility lines involved. So it's really important to leave those trees alone and call someone to deal with it. Sometimes we'll get people that want to help out and use their chainsaws and help us. It's really important to let professional arborists do it. When trees fall, they're under a lot of tension, and if you cut the wrong space, it may spring back in a weird way or roll. So it's really important to allow this cleanup to happen by professionals that are out there.
You said you have 3 people for regular weekends as opposed to just also this weekend on call.
Yes, every single day we have 3 people on call.
So have you thought about adding more since there's the probability of having more stuff down?
Yeah, so what we do is right now we're going to stick with our regular on-call, and as those calls start going in, we look at the volume and see how much is there, and then we start adding staff to that. So we have 5 inspectors that we regularly, during every single day, that do regular inspections. We can call on them. We have 12 people on our tree crews, so we can call on them to do more inspections. It's very easy to ramp up. And then at Landscape Management, we are all essential personnel, so every single person in this building can do inspections, can help out. So we have the ability to ramp up and get as many people as we need.
Is there anything that you all are doing right now to prevent preventative measures? You talked about the roots of trees and things like that.
Yeah, so we estimate that we have about 250,000 trees in our right-of-way inventory. So it would be difficult for us to go ahead and do some kind of mitigation this close to the storm. What we do throughout the year is we do inspections, we do tree maintenance, and so we make sure we prioritize our highest issues. So where we have dead branches or whole trees that are dead. So throughout a regular season of maintenance, we're helping to reduce the risk throughout when we have large events like this. But again, we have 250,000 trees out there in the right of way. And then of course, trees on private property get affected as well, and they will also fall into the rights of way. So if a tree from a yard falls into the street, we will clear that street. We won't clear on the private property, but we'll get that street clear out there. So it's not just our trees, it's all the trees around there.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
One is, are there certain types of trees or neighborhoods that tend to see more damage during ice storms? And then kind of the same question we put to the roads guy, are there any things that residents can do right now to help prevent damage before the storm hits?
Sure, yeah. As to the tree species that may be more affected, with the ice, it's going to be coating those branches and those twigs. So if you have an evergreen tree, right, a tree that has leaves on during the wintertime, so Leland cypress are very notorious for getting ice on them and snow on them and leaning over and falling. That's just a species that tend to do that. So our evergreen trees are going to have more surface area for the leaves to hold that ice. Trees that may have ivy growing in the canopy as well, that stays green all year, that's going to add a lot of weight to those branches, so those type of things. But we do have some trees that lose their leaves, like Bradford pears. Just the way that they grow, the branches grow upright, and they're very tight junctions. And that's a very weak area for a tree. So once you get ice on that weak area, it's just could potentially fall. So, and as far as the area of the city, it really just depends on how that storm comes in, right? So when we have hurricanes, it just depends on what direction it's coming from. When we talk about wind events, which I don't think this one is a wind event, but most of our weather comes from the southwest, so the trees are used to dealing with that normal sway and the wind coming from one direction. When it comes from a different direction, it kind of throws them off a little bit. But this ice event is extra weight on those branches and in weakened areas. So dead branches, areas that have weak attachments to the stem, trees with roots that may be rotten are going to have more of an issue. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and then what-
You had 3 parts, so I just want to make sure I got everything.
Well,
Sorry.
And then, is there anything that residents can do right now
Yep.
to help prevent damage before the storm?
So it's really close to the storm. A lot of arborists, private companies, they're probably getting their crews ramped up right now and trying to get things together like we are. We're getting our trucks ready, make sure we have fuel, make sure we have chains, make sure we have bar oil, everything we need for this event. So they might be preparing for that. It's really important if you know you have a tree that may have a dead branch, you might not be able to get someone to come out and mitigate it before Saturday. It's Thursday, so it may be a little bit difficult. I always tell people with your trees, you should just be aware of what they look out through the entire season, not just the couple days before a storm event comes through. Making sure you're taking care of any dead branches, any disease that might be on that tree. But after that storm comes through, in your yard, be very careful. Look up, look down, look everywhere. There might be a branch that's broken off but is hanging up in there and could potentially fall down. If you're not comfortable with assessing what your tree looks like, if there's damage to your tree, International Society of Arboriculture, you want to get a certified arborist out there to look at that tree, to make an assessment and determine what mitigation you might need to do. Some trees might be okay if with a little bit of branch breakage. Just depends on how bad the storm is. It may be a complete loss, but have a professional out there. One thing I always like to tell people, certified arborists are not knocking on your door looking for business, all right? So just be aware of that. If someone does come on your door and say, hey, I'm doing work in the neighborhood, vet them, see who their company is. You can look them up. treesaregood.org. You can verify their credentials and make sure they are a certified arborist. Again, you just want to make sure you have the person that has the right skills and the right knowledge to do work on those trees.
Lori, can you talk about the website?
Yeah, sure. So we do have a website, charlottenc.gov/storms. It's on the handout that I gave you. If you don't have a handout, make sure you get one at the end. We have an interactive map on there. So if you look at our map, it'll show you where we've received calls from 911. So the red dots are going to be we've received the call, but we haven't gotten to it. When it turns green, it means we've mitigated that issue and that area is clear. So you can look at that throughout the storm and see where things are popping up. It's public. Any resident can look at that as well. Sometimes I do that when I'm driving in the morning just to make sure roads aren't still closed. So it's very easy. It has a lot of really good information on there about storms as well. So a lot of good information out there. Thank you.
Speaking of that, can you talk about from the time you guys get the call
Mm-hmm.
to the time you guys might be able to get out there, given the fact that probable ice on the roads
Yep.
and everything else, what time frame can people expect for you guys to actually show up?
Sure. So it's really important when people do call into 911 to give as many details as possible, to tell if the road is fully closed or the road is blocked or the branch is on the sidewalk. So for this particular event, we're really going to be prioritizing things that are in the road and getting that roadway clear. So if someone calls in and says a branch fell on the sidewalk, we're probably not going to go out and inspect until next week. So really important to give as many details, as much information. So we'll look at that and prioritize where it is. So our safety is very important. We have very heavy trucks that are going out there. We want to make sure our crews are safe. We will not just be randomly driving around looking for issues. We're going to be responding. So it could be several hours before we get out there. When the police do call us, we do work with dispatch directly. So when you call 911, we are alerted immediately to where it is, and then we can talk to dispatch and get more information from the officer on the ground, and they can let us know when we need to get out, if it's really, really critical. But like Alfred was saying earlier, really encouraging residents to stay off the road is really important. The less people traveling will be better for their vehicles to be able to get around to mitigate any issues and for us to be able to get around. But there will be other arborist companies out as well taking care of down material. So it's not just us at the City of Charlotte. So just try to stay off the roads as much as possible.
Well, are you, sorry, continue. You guys have anything? Observer?
Yeah, so you said if, of course, it falls on city property, that's when you'll respond. Say somebody has a tree fall in their yard,
Yes.
private property.
Yes.
What should they do then?
Yeah, so if the tree falls on private property, either in their backyard towards their house or something like that, they could call an arborist as well to come out. But again, they may not be moving trucks out during the really intense weather as well. If it does fall on their house or it falls on like a utility line in their backyard, utility line, of course, call Duke Energy, and they will come out and make sure that they get that off the line. Duke is going to be very busy as well. Sometimes trees do fall on lines. Sometimes the ice, weighs those lines down enough. Lots of different issues. So if power does go out, if people can be patient, I know it's not comfortable, but be patient as possible. If it does fall into your yard, you may call somebody, but they may not be able to get to you until the next week. Again, being really careful whenever there's a tree down on the ground. Again, I don't recommend just the average homeowner take their chainsaw and try to cut up that tree because things are going to be in weird tension, and if you cut the wrong way, it could move in a strange way. So really getting a arborist out there to take care of that is really the important thing.
Laura, you touched on this a little bit, but especially with snowstorms and ice storms like this, people like to go out and see it because it does look pretty and everything. But when it comes to that safety, how long after a storm like this can the weight on those trees still impact the trees if they're breaking the branches or even falling down, and how dangerous can it still be after the storm? Yeah, sure. So that ice may stay on the trees until we get, good enough temperature to start melting it, especially if we get like a half inch or inch. It's going to take a minute for that ice to melt. It's really important that people don't try to take the ice off themselves. Just let that thaw naturally and come off of there. A lot of trees are, especially the ends of the branches and the twigs, are pretty flexible and pretty bendy, which is good. So they'll be able to manage that. And even after the ice melts, it may be a little bit droopy, but kind of over time, it probably will start to lift up. So, I always like to tell people not to move too quickly if they have damage on their tree and make like a really fast decision, especially if the branches are just bent. They may, over time kind of lift back up. So it may be, weeks that you might be seeing that, but hopefully not the ice staying on the tree that long. And even just walking around, though, and just being outside near those trees. Yes. How dangerous can that be? Yeah, so you never know when a branch could potentially break. So trees are work with a lot of different pressures with wind and rain. When we get this ice on there, it could just be too much weight for that structure of the wood, or if there's a defect, like a damage or a bad attachment, or an insect is bored in, or a mushroom or something is causing a defect, and they could just break. So it's really good to just kind of steer clear outside. We call it the drip line of where the ends of the branches are. So think of like an umbrella. Stay outside of that area if a tree has ice on it.
Last question.
Yeah, so a lot of focus is rightfully so on sleet, ice that, obviously damaged trees. Yep. There's not so much focus on what could be the coldest air we've seen in decades on the way, especially Monday night into our Tuesday. I think last time we saw single digits was Christmas of 2022, so over 3 years ago. Might be even colder than that. People are concerned about maybe trees that aren't so used to the cold. What can they do?
So if you've recently planted a tree, so this is tree planting season, basically end of October through March, so people may have recently installed small trees in their yard. They might be concerned about those new younger trees. You can, put a sheet over that if it's small enough. Obviously, if you have a 30-foot tree, you're not going to be able to do a lot of protection for that tree. A tree that's very large has dealt with these storm events. Even though for us, the last one was several years ago, you've got a tree that's 30, 40 feet tall, you've got some age in that tree, 20 plus 30 years. So it's had these different events throughout the year. But if you've newly planted some new plants or some new trees, if you can put even just like a sheet over it and just make sure that it's kind of loosely tied at the base to kind of keep it out. We're getting pretty close to the storm, but if soil that has moisture in it is a better heat regulator for the roots of the tree. So you could water some of your plants while it's still warm during the day and get that moisture in the ground. You can also use mulch. Mulch is a fantastic insulator for the ground as well. So you don't ever want to go more than 3 to 4 inches of mulch around a tree root. You want to pull it back from the stem, the main stem of that tree as well. But that's going to be a really good insulator for the soil, holding in that moisture and holding in that heat and helping those roots as well. So that's a very easy thing that people can do, is get some mulch out on top of their plants. If you have tender plants, I have a lot of butterfly-friendly plants in my yard. So a lot of those, thankfully, are kind of died back for the year, but I have a couple evergreen ones. You know, you could put some cover on them if you really wanted to.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.